All right, I just wanted to do a couple of quick tips for the assignment this week. One is when you're putting together your let's put it over here. When you're putting together your design, keep an eye on the size. So you really don't want it to be more than about 50 millimeters big, just to keep it kind of decent sized. If you end up making it a little bit too big, then before you save it out, just go ahead and try to scale that down and get it back in the 50 range. Then a couple of things to make this a little bit make it a little bit more sense. To get this in the format that I'd like, it's either an STL file or a 3MF. And an STL file can be made from Tinkercad by just going to Export and then saying STL, and that just downloads the file. Now you'll notice it says Epic Hango Sango, so lovely name, and that's because of this name right here. So one option is to name your Tinkercad files. It makes a random name. You could call this assignment 1 or whatever you want to call it. And that way, when you download that now, it'll be called that. So now you can see that one's called assignment1.stl. And then that's a file you can upload to, to Canvas. So one other thing is if you're wanting to try using Fusion, I'm going to create a quick sketch, and I'm just going to put a circle in here and a couple of lines. And back over here and finish the sketch, and then we will, wrong key, create a revolve, and I'm going to select these two around this axis, and now we've got, okay. So the tricky part about Fusion is really knowing what size something is. You can select this and go to the inspect, and you can see here maybe that the outer loop, yeah, it really doesn't tell you much about like how big this is. You can dimension it. We can go back into the sketch, and I could say D for dimension and go to here and at least know that that radius then is 57 millimeters. So that's going to make the disc 114, or the coin 114 millimeters, which is far bigger than you want. We want to keep that under 50. So then in this case, if I want my and 20 millimeters high is too big. It needs to be under 12. So then if we make this one 10 millimeters and this one 20, then we are pretty sure we've got an issue, because that's going to stick out there. So I'm going to make that point and that point concentric. And so now when we hit finish, now we've got a much smaller coin and then something to do that with. Now, if we had, though, that bigger one, so we'll just finish that. To get this into an STL file or a 3MF, we can come up here to File, and then 3D Print. I find this to be the easiest way to do it. You can do Export, but I like the 3D Print option, and I'm going to set this to either STL or 3MF, so we can already get that 3MF file if we want. Refinement, I tend to leave this high. If you put it low and turn on Preview Mesh, you can see that it's not very triangulated. Whereas if we turn that up to high, because we have a lot more triangles, that's going to create a smoother file. So I tend to leave it on high. And if you have to turn off this Send to 3D Print utility, otherwise you won't get an OK button. So we'll hit OK, pick a place where you want to put it, and I'll call it MD Test. But now it might be too big. So now what we can do is we can actually import this, and we'll choose a file. And where did I put it? Downloads. Oh, I shouldn't have made that a 3MF. All right, so let's select that again. 3D print, and here we'll change this to STL and hit OK again. MD test. Save that. All right, so now I've got a MD test, and now I want to import that mdtest.stl file, and it's set to millimeters, so we'll import it. Okay, and there is the file, or that maker coin. Now that's way too big, so if I select this, I can see how big it is. We can just scale that down. And you'd want to, scale down the vertical axis also to something that kind of looks right. And now you've got a maker coin that's within the size that you want. And that's 5 millimeters, so that should be fine. And then you can take this one and export that again as an STL. And now you would have your STL file. So that's another way to kind of get it to the right size. I know that can be a little bit confusing sometimes. Yeah, so hopefully that helps in getting it to the right size, but then also in getting the STL or 3MF. So you can go straight to 3MF if you're doing Fusion, but Tinkercad is easier to do the STL file. All right, now one thing I wanted to show too is if you used a slicer to get the 3MF file, if you really wanted to. Again, this isn't really needed right now. But if I put that MD test into here, now you can see what its dimensions are, and we can actually scale it down here where it'll scale it proportionally, which is really nice. So now if I scale this down, I can kind of see in that readout that it's, that's about 50%. I can see where it's 61 millimeters, so that's still a little big. So I can just kind of keep going down. So now we're at about 50 millimeters, so that should be fine. So that the slicer is a good way to scale stuff down too. And then if you wanted to, you could go to File and then Save Project As. And here you could say, I want to save this as a 3MF. And so this is a way to get that 3MF file. And if we replace that one, all right, takes a second. All right, so now if we do new project, so now it's blank, and if we open that MD test that we just saved, and now we can see that it's still scaled the same size that we want. It's right under 50 millimeters. So that's the slicer is kind of a helpful way to get the file the right size, and then you would just upload this 3MF file and you're done. So that's a way to use the slicer. Now we will get into, and I'll make another video here in a minute about some of the kind of gotchas that I see in some of the files, just so you guys can start to learn some of the things to keep an eye on. Okay, hope this was helpful.